If you had any doubts about the stark contrast between President Biden and former President Donald Trump with respect to how they react to legal action taken against them and their families, look no further than this recent comment from President Biden himself. But before we unpack all that, if you haven't yet, please hit that like, subscribe, and the alert bell. Maybe check out my Patreon. I'd appreciate the support. All right, folks, so what am I talking about? Well, President Biden was at a press conference recently announcing a new agreement, like a tripartite agreement between South Korea, Japan, and the United States, and we're going to cover that in a different video. I did want to just emphasize this particular comment made at the press conference about it. It's about a separate issue, which is the ongoing investigations into President Biden's surviving son, Hunter Biden, right? Because we recently heard that Merrick Garland, President Biden's own attorney general, had appointed a special counsel to investigate Hunter Biden, right? That's a pretty serious level of scrutiny and pretty serious level of authority given to a Trump appointee. David Weiss, the special counsel, is a Trump appointee, right? So that's the context in which this question is being asked. A reporter asked him about it, and I want you to hear what President Biden has to say.
And if you'll indulge me, Mr. President, on a domestic matter, what is your reaction to the special counsel appointment last week into your son? Thank you.
Well, first of all, look, there's not much, if anything, I agree on with my predecessor on foreign policy. His America First policy, walking away from the rest of the world, has made us weaker, not stronger. America's strong with our allies and our alliances, and that's why we will endure. And it's a strength that, quite frankly...
And for context here, he is answering the question. Before the reporter asked this question, he asked a question first about the tripartite agreement, which is, of course, much more important. So he's answering two questions. The reporter asked two questions, one about the agreement and the other one about Hunter Biden. He'll get to it.
That increases all or three of our strengths. This is just about one summit. What makes today's different is it actually launching a series of initiatives that are actually institutional changes in how we deal with one another. And security cooperation, economic cooperation, technology cooperation, development cooperation, consultation exercises. And all of this will create its own momentum, I believe, year by year, month by month, to make the relationship stronger and more certain to remain, to be in place. And with regard on these results, I think are going to keep it going, and I think are going to benefit all our countries. And with regard to the second question, I have no comment on any investigation that's going on. That's up to the Justice Department, and that's all I have to say.
All right, folks. So that might not seem like much to you, but actually it's everything. It's the world. So I just want to be clear here. We have a special counsel who is a Trump appointee, given considerable authority and latitude to investigate President Biden's son. President Biden, as the President of the United States, could order Attorney General Merrick Garland to fire that special prosecutor, or to prevent that special prosecutor from ever having been appointed in the first place, or fire Merrick Garland if Merrick Garland refuses. There's quite a considerable amount of authority that the sitting president has. And not only is there no evidence whatsoever that President Biden has attempted to leverage that power, he is publicly stating, listen, I have no comment on it. I'm not going to comment on it. I'm not going to reprimand witnesses. I'm not going to intimidate witnesses the way that Donald Trump did witnesses in the recent Fulton County, Georgia indictment. I'm not going to rant and rave and lose my temper and call it a witch hunt, et cetera, and so forth. He doesn't do that. Joe Biden doesn't do that. Instead, and you know he's not happy with it. He lost children before. He lost a daughter back in like the 70s along with his first wife in a car accident. His eldest son, Beau Biden, died back in like 2015. So this man's life is marked with tragedy and complications. And Hunter Biden has had a very difficult life as well, despite, of course, enormous privilege in terms of being related to a vice president and then a president, drug addiction, et cetera, and so forth. I mean, it's quite a bit wrong in terms of Hunter Biden's life, the things that he struggled with. And of course, that's affected Joe Biden as a father. And you have to know that even if the investigation is merited, Joe Biden loves his son, right? Even if your son struggles with demons and addiction and is perhaps a criminal, right? You still probably love your son. So rather than indulge his anger and his rage and his frustration, which he probably feels on some level, instead he says, listen, I have no comment. It's up to the Justice Department. That is an attitude, that is a statement, that is a posture which distinguishes Joe Biden from Donald Trump. Donald Trump would never say that. Donald Trump would never say no comment. It's up to the Justice Department if they're investigating him or his children. Maybe Eric or Don Jr., I'm not sure, but certainly like Ivanka. I mean, can you imagine Donald Trump ever evoking that same ethic? Of course you wouldn't. We see it now, the contrast, where Donald Trump is repeatedly trying to intimidate witnesses, where he's ranting and raving, casting aspersions on the judge and the prosecutors. Just the contrast is wild, and good for President Biden for demonstrating that leadership quality, which Donald Trump lacks and never had.